Hello YouTube, Dave here again. So starting tomorrow, from June 1st through the 3rd I believe it is, Wizards of the Coast will be doing their 3-day event, the Stream of Many Eyes. So last year they had done their Stream of Annihilation, which basically is the same kind of event. What it's meant to do is to essentially introduce us to the next big story that will be coming out for 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, as well as a chance to announce other products that are being released. So in this video I kind of want to speculate on what I think the next story might be, as well as some things that I think they may end up announcing as well, and how I want to see them handle the release of their upcoming products. So for a little bit of, we'll start with the speculation. So the main thing that I kind of looked at so far, and I'll be honest, I don't really follow a lot of the Wizards of the Coast, weekly Twitch stream videos or anything along those lines. Their announcement videos that they do on YouTube or that they re-upload to YouTube. I honestly don't really have the time to watch a lot of those. So they may have revealed some information in there, but I don't have access to it. So this is, again, pure speculation on my part. It's just meant to be sort of a fun thing. So if I get it wrong, then, well, I get it wrong. I'm totally okay with that. But yeah, looking back to how they've been presenting the Stream of Many Eyes and what I think it's going to be and how I feel that it's probably going to end up going, I look at the first thing is just the advertising material that they have alongside of it. So, to go back to last year's Stream of Annihilation, they had the Green Devil face from the Tomb of Horrors pretty much plastered all over that leading into the event. It was always something that was present. So, looking at what they've been using to advertise the current stream, the Stream of Many Eyes, they've been using the cover of the Monster Manual with Xanathar and someone running away from it. Now, they did have like the googly eyes added to everybody, which is, kind of comedic, although I would never do that to any of my books other than to simply place it very gently on there. But if the Green Devil face that was used in the advertising for Tomb of Annihilation is anything to go off of, I think that our big storyline for this year is going to involve either Xanathar himself or some other Beholder-based threat. Just because when I think of the idea of many eyes, I think of beholders. There's not too many other monsters who are famous for having multiple eyes in D&D. I mean, yeah, there are definitely a few, but when I think of many eyes, again, a beholder is the first thing that I think of. And again, since they use Xanathar, or they use this image from the Monster Manual cover as part of their promotional material, I think it's going to involve something to do with either the Xanathar's Guild or, again, maybe some other beholder cult or threat. Could be something like, a hive mother, for example, going to unleash her beholders on, all of Faerun. It's something that, again, just to me is what makes sense. But there have been a few other theories or a few other things that have been presented as possible stories for this year. Going back a few months ago, I read an article that suspected that the next big major story is actually going to involve the March of the Modrons, which are like these, basically they're monsters based off of just geometric shapes. And they're cool looking. They were kind of silly looking originally, way back. I think it was in the Fiend Folio for 1st edition AD&D. So they were kind of silly looking. The modern art has them looking a little bit, more, I don't want to necessarily say intimidating, but they do have them looking, a little bit cooler than they were before. Let me just see if I can find if they had them in here. So that was one thing that, was a possibility, was the March of the Modrons. Now, yeah, here we go. So that's kind of what they look like here. And they are supposed to be, as far as I understand, beings of, like, pure law. So it'll be interesting to see what happens if it involves them. I don't really know what kind of storyline or threat that all of these lawful creatures could possibly present, so it'll be interesting to see how they do it. And if it is the March of the Modrons, then I think it would be a truly unique story, something that hasn't really been done before, or at least not in a very long time. I can't remember really anything from 3rd edition or 4th edition that really used moderns in any serious capacity. So it'd be interesting if it has something to do with that. Another possibility is because it was hinted at in Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes, that we might be seeing a storyline that revolves around the blood war between demons and devils and their cults, with the player characters maybe disrupting some of these cults before moving on and taking on the actual, an actual either demon lord or, a archdevil from, one of the rulers of the Nine. So that's something that could be a possibility as well. And again, there is some foreshadowing that sort of, works towards that. So it'd be interesting to see, again, how they do that. The last possibility, which is probably the most remote, but I think besides the Beholder one, because Beholders are my favorite monsters and anything involving them I automatically love, another interesting concept might be something involving the Githyanki. Like, back when 3.5 first launched in 2003, Wizards of the Coast had an event called Incursion, which was this crossover event between the two magazines of Dragon and Dungeon, which had like the Githyanki raiding, the material plane, and the adventure Lich Queen's Beloved in Dungeon magazine was used as sort of like the climax to that storyline. And because, the Gith were again included in Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes as fully playable races, it could be interesting to see if maybe it has something to do with the Githyanki. But again, these are all purely speculation. Right now, my money still kind of sits on that is probably something to do with the Xanathar's Guild, or some sort of threat similar to that. But again, we'll see what happens. Now, in addition to that, last year we had a whole bunch of other products that were announced at the same time, like Xanathar's Guide to Everything, the Dungeon Master Screen Reincarnated, as well as the Tomb of Annihilation dice. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the other items that might be possibly presented as well, and just kind of go from there. So I think what's going to end up happening is we're probably going to see a couple more accessories announced. I'm leaning towards, at this point, thinking that they might do some other dungeon tile set, but I'm not entirely, convinced that that's necessarily going to be the case. But by, opening the gates with the Dungeon Tiles Reincarnated, there is possibility for them to expand on that, and I think it's something that they hopefully should do. I don't honestly know how sales have gone of the Dungeon Tiles, but I would like to see them do, some more of it. Maybe have another Dungeon Tile set, like, thick box set with 16 sheets, or, even if it's like 12 sheets, and, 4 sheets would be, wilderness themed, 4 sheets would be, I keep messing that math up, 4 sheets would be like city themed, and another 4 sheets could be more dungeon themed, and I think that would be a great way to sort of go about that. On the other hand, they may also potentially reincarnate their adventure grid. Now, the adventure grid that they released is something that I use a lot, so I'm not saying that it's a terrible product, but it just doesn't seem to have a real feel of quality to it, in terms of, the materials involved. So this would be an opportunity for them to revisit that concept. And I think the best way to do it, honestly, would be to get rid of the thick cardboard that's underneath of it, and just create double-sided maps similar to what we have with Pathfinder and Starfinder, which are just fold-out maps that are just, just as thin as the paper stock that the actual maps are printed on. They're double-sided, and they're, fully dry erase, wet erase, or you can even use permanent markers if you use like a dry erase marker over top of it at another point to lift the permanent marker off. So revisiting that idea and releasing some, even if they're just generic, like have an actual bundle. Just have, like adventure grids reincarnated, and have one that's like, you could have a double-sided one for like a dungeon or a cavern. You could have a double-sided one for like a battlefield or forest, and then you could have another one that would be like city streets or sewer accesses. So I think something like that would also be really interesting, and to do it in that format would actually reduce probably some of the production costs, because you're not having to have like the adhesive and the cardboard, and they'll look better, because honestly that cardboard is really ugly looking. and it just doesn't say quality, which is something that I think Wizards of the Coast really should struggle to or try to maintain. Also, by choosing or by following the example with Pathfinder, if just having them double-sided, also makes it so that you're not having a slit cut halfway or 2/3 of the way up the product, so that you can fold all the cardboard in. So just again, something that I'm not convinced that they're going to do it, but I would love to see. That would be an announcement that, in my opinion, would be very well received. To have these sort of more generic dungeon maps or dungeon adventure grids, or not even dungeon, but just adventure grids that you can have double-sided with different types of settings and just let them draw in their features. So that would be something that I would really like to see. Speaking of dice, they're going to probably announce another set of collector's dice for the new storyline, whatever it may end up being. And that's fine, but I really hope, it's probably going to have the same, packaging. It's probably still going to have the collector's tin instead of, I think having a decently sized dice bag and just having it in a box with the dice in it would be better. And you could have like your logo for the storyline just sort of done onto the dice bag itself, embroidered onto the dice bag. But they're probably going to stick to the collector's tins, which is fine, although it drives the price up. And my main thing for these, if they do another set of dice, which I'm almost convinced they're going to, is to have the dice look better than what's in these. These dice were super disappointing when I actually opened up the product. Like, the packaging looks beautiful, the tin is awesome looking, but the dice themselves really were bland, uninteresting, and why was the D20 a different color? So anyway, the next set, if they do it, should have a nice design to the dice. Even just something as simple as a swirl pattern with 2 different tones. The base tone of the dice, or the base color of the dice itself, and just have a variant shade of that same color swirled throughout. You could have maybe a little bit of a metallic sheen to it, whatever, that's fine. If you're going to have the D20s though, one of them, sure, have it a different color, but have one that's the same color as the rest of the freaking set, so that, people like myself aren't going to lose their minds when their dice don't match. And you can have that second off-color D20 for advantage and disadvantage. Something that I think is a major improvement that they can make over this set is to have the 2 D20s and have one of them for your standard rolls and one with your advantage or at disadvantage, because most people try to roll those at the same time, just to eliminate the amount of time it takes to do all the dice rolling. So that's something that I would like to see. They're probably also going to announce the second book, the one that's going to come out in November, which at this point I really don't know what it could possibly be, unless this current story follows the same format as what was the main story called there? The Rise of Tiamat, I guess. The Hoard of the Dragon Queen and Rise of Tiamat for the Tyranny of Dragons. There we go. Just total brain fart. They may end up following the Tyranny of Dragons format for this upcoming story, where they have 2 separate books come out for the same overall story. Now, this could be a good thing, because it might mean that we're finally going to have the campaign that goes beyond 15th level, which I think is something that Wizards of the Coast really does need to do, because there's been a lot of demand for it, and the last adventure that went to level 15 as an actual story-based adventure was Out of the Abyss, which was the 3rd campaign to be released, 3rd or 4th. I think Curse of Strahd may have been in between Prince of the Apocalypse and Rage of Demons, but it's been a couple of years since they've had a campaign that's gone to beyond 15th level. Now, yes, I understand that Tales from the Yawning Portal did have a high-level adventure in there with Tomb of Horrors and stuff like that, and I understand that fully. But the fact of the matter is that that was just a series of dungeon crawls that really had nothing interconnecting them. The possible exception of Forge of Fury and Sunless Citadel, because they were originally adventures that were meant to go one after the other. So that's something that they could end up doing. And if they do that, I'm totally fine with it. My only thing is that I hope that they're not both priced in the $60+ range Canadian, because that would be a little bit excessive. Unless they are, both as thick as the regular campaign. So if that's the case, we could have a campaign that takes us all the way until this time next year. And really, when you think about it, the Tomb of Annihilation has been the main story for the last year. There haven't been any other adventures released since then, and that may be the way that they want to go. I don't know, but if they do split it up into 2 books, I'm okay with it as long as they're both high quality and as long as the second book goes beyond that 15th level barrier that none of the other adventures have breached at this point in time. The last thing that I want to say about what I'm hoping for out of this announcement is that the releases are going to be more spread out than they were last year. So last year, when they did their Stream of Annihilation, they announced the D&D character sheets, which released pretty shortly after the stream, and I think it was at the end of the same month. But then there was a 2-month gap where there was absolutely nothing released, so July and August had no releases, and September had the DM Screen Reincarnated, the Tomb of Annihilation dice, and the Tomb of Annihilation Adventure all release on the same day, which was utterly ridiculous. And I remember being pretty frustrated with that, because I really had to figure out how I was going to afford all 3 of those things at the same time. Which was not a pleasant thing to go through. So there's no reason to do that either, because what you're doing with Wizards of the Coast, when they stack 1 month that heavily with things, you're going to reach the point where you're forcing your consumers to start making choices. And, versus if you spread everything out, your consumers may be more inclined to pick everything up because it's the only thing coming out that month. So, they don't have to worry about, well, I want the book and I'd like to have the dice, but maybe I can't afford both. And the dice are, generally speaking, hard to come by. I mean, since their initial release, I haven't seen a single store here in Halifax that's had maybe only a single replacement copy come in a few weeks later. But for the most part, I've never seen them be restocked. So, if these things are going to be hard to come by, it's something that you should give a little bit of space between, your releases, because again, you're going to sell a lot more if there's not a whole bunch of other things coming out. So if they announce some sort of accessory, there's no reason why that accessory cannot come out in either July or August. And I think July would be the perfect month for that. So have the announcement in June and say, hey, this is our major accessory that we're releasing this year. It was going to be releasing in July. And then we've got our new set of dice for the upcoming storyline. That'll be releasing in August. So you can see, and again, the artwork would probably be pretty much the same that we've seen for all the announcement stuff, hopefully without the googly eyes. But, release that in August, and then have your adventure release in September. That way, you're spreading it out. People are going to be more receptive to picking up each of those items instead of forcing you to start choosing, because that's just way too much stuff coming out at once. And with as limited a number of releases as come out for Wizards of the Coast every year, there's absolutely zero excuse for having 3 things in 1 month when you're only releasing 6 products over the course of the entire year. So that's just, again, kind of silly and ridiculous, and there's absolutely no call for it. So I'm hoping that hopefully they learned something from that last year and they spread things out a little bit instead of having it all come out at the same time. That's my biggest thing that I want to see. The story reveal, fantastic. Whatever it's going to be, I'm sure I'm going to be getting the book anyway, so I'm not too worried about that. If they announce an accessory, then again, hopefully it'll be up to a better standard than what we've had so far, which have been really sort of hit or miss, depending on which item that we're talking about. And of course we know that there's going to probably be a new set of collector's dice to go along with it, so just don't have them all come out at the same time, because again, that's utterly ridiculous. And it's, half of your year's products are releasing on the same day, so that's just again, insanity in my opinion. So anyway, what do you guys think? What do you think the next big story is going to be? Do you think it's going to be based around Xanathar and Beholders because of, you know, the idea of the many eyes? Do you think it could be the March of the Modrons? Do you think it could be the blood war between demons and devils? Do you think it could be the March of the Githyanki, maybe in another incursion into the prime material plane? Or do you think it could be something else altogether? So let me know in the comments below what you think. The last thing that I will state is there is also a possibility that the November release D&D book, which was probably going to be an adventure, could also potentially be a Undermountain based sort of large dungeon crawl sort of thing. So that is a possibility, and I just kind of want to throw that out there because, you know, where I said there's a chance they may split the big story into 2 books. That is a possibility, but there's also, again, there've been rumors circulating that Undermountain will be the next, the November release, and will be sort of similar to Tales from the Yawning Portal in that it'll be a series of, you know, smaller dungeon crawls that you can sort of link together or throw throughout, you know, an adventurer's career. So last thing, I'll just throw that out there. But again, let me know what you guys think, what your predictions are, and how you want to see them handle the release dates. Thank you guys very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and we will see you next time. Take care.